My plan today is to finish the for loop discussion in the first hour with any luck. And then in the second hour, finish the do while pre-test, post-test loop discussion. And if I finish that, then we're done. However, I did promise you 10 minutes of lab. I really meant 50 minutes of lab. So if I don't quite get done, I'll push the end of the recordings, the end of the lectures off until next Monday, excuse me. And it'll be an hour at most. Then we'll be done. In the meantime, after today, I believe you'll have everything you need to do the assignment tracker in your arsenal, or at least have heard about it. So when you're done with your enhanced math program at Friday, or sooner, start cranking on the assignment tracker. You'll have a week and a half or so to finish it. I don't think that's unreasonable. Before I forget, on the website, I've added the notes for string format. So if you decide you want to use that for something, come on. I've added the notes. So I didn't think it was really right to leave it in the program, and you'd have to remember it's in the Nichols program. Go find it there. That's not right. So I threw it on my website. It's up there. It has pretty much the same stuff that was buried inside that program. It does have an extra example or two. This one we might take advantage of today. So that's available to you. And let's go take a quick look also at the assignments. Here's the assignment tracker. And notice I've given you a toe chart for it. So I'm telling you what the input processing is. I'm telling you what calculations need to be done, what needs to be displayed, what all the processes are. There is a starter program for it that already has all the objects on it with all the objects named that match the toe chart. And so all you got to do is translate it. So a lot of it's already been done, so that program it's not as bad as math because you're not starting from scratch. I'm giving you a design. There is also a worksheet that you can definitely be working on. And if you get to a question that talks about pre-test, post-test loops, put it aside until we talk about it. Or look them up in the book or in my notes if you wish. That you can be working on. Both of those, the program and the worksheet, are due on the 17th at 11:59 p.m. There are, at some point here, I think after math, after Friday, your NQA cards are pretty much useless. Can't give me an NQA card, so I'm going to turn it in after the end of the semester. That doesn't work. So what I will probably do sometime around Monday is sit down and add the NQA points to all of your grades, just like today I added all the zeros to your grades for the assignments that aren't in. I'll add your NQA points. One of the things that happened, luckily, for all those zeros I put in there, some of you said, wait a minute, I did that. That's what I'm looking for, is what's wrong with my grade book. There's a lot of scores in there. Let's make sure they're right. Okay. If there's others that are wrong, don't tell me now. Question?
If we did the lab, and we did it with someone else in there, would we have to go back and do it? I can show you.
You did it somewhere else? What do you mean?
No, because I did it with Josiah.
Yes?
Before, and I didn't get
The for loop lab?
Yeah.
Talk to me about it later. I'll give it to you. Especially since he'll verify it if you find him. But so any other problems you find with the grade book, let me know. That's part of why I'm doing this. The letter grade that Blackboard is showing for you right now should be pretty accurate. If you're not happy with it, that means there's updates and programs and missing assignments to get turned in, and your grade should change. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you want us to give you back the NQA cards?
I probably should collect them just so they don't rattle around out there. And in the past, what I've done, let me reconsider that. That's a good point. Because if I just give you the points and you don't have to give me the cards, then that makes it harder for me to track later. And I also told you that you had to manage them, and if you lose them, you can't get them. So I'm going to have to backtrack on what I said before about automatically entering your NQA points. Anytime now, you can put your name on the back of an NQA card, turn it into me, and say, I want my 4 points, and just write 4 points on it. And I'll give you your 4 points, and if you give me 2 of them, you get your 8 points. So you can do that anytime now if you're not planning on using NQA cards for math. That's the only one that's really left for NQA cards. So yes, I've changed my mind. You must turn them in to me to get your 8 points or 12 points if you've earned an extra one.
So we don't have to do any of the other 3, unit 6,
What other 3?
the big,
There's 4 evaluation sheets.
yeah,
Oh, those? No.
okay. So it's just,
Yep, the assignment tracker and the worksheet. The retirement planning program is now a lab. I got to remove those. Big and those I've never had a chance to get to make you write them, so I might as well remove the work evaluation sheets as well. Thank you. Nobody's ever complained about extra evaluation sheets before. I'll get rid of them.
well, I was just worried.
No, they're easy to get rid of. I'll get rid of them.
I was kind of sweating this morning.
All right, what else you got? Okay, so I'm going to shift to my notes then. And today we're going to finish up. I don't really even need the notes until we get to the pre-test, post-test loops, because what I want to finish up is that application that we started last time for statistics. And we wrote part of it, so I'm going to get this guy out of the way here. Before I do, the downside of you guys being first is occasionally I forget things. There is on OneDrive another little program called Autocomplete Test. We did talk about combo boxes and how they can auto-complete, right? You type some stuff in the list filters and it suggests that maybe this is the one that you want. I actually wrote a little program to demonstrate all that, so let me just run that here real quick. And this is on OneDrive. I'm just going to show it to you. You don't have to follow. This is on OneDrive, so if you actually want to look at the program and see what it does or how it works because you're curious, it's out there. But here's a combo box, got some names in it. And right now it's drop down style because that's the default style with no autocomplete. That's the default. If I change it to drop down list, notice the appearance of the combo box changes because with drop down list you can't type. I think it was Ben or somebody who was telling me you can't type in that kind of box. It's true, but I can click and then type. If I press a C, it jumps down to the C's. So it kind of helps me. But I can't type Volker in there. That's not on the list. It won't let me do it. That's a drop-down list. It does its own validation to show or to force you to pick something from that list. That's nice, but it doesn't play well with autocomplete. I'm going to show you that in a second. The other one that I talked about and said I've never used it, it seems kind of stupid to me, is the simple combo box. It has a text box on the top and a list box underneath that never goes away. So I'm not a big fan of that one, but it's available. Maybe it suits your needs. I've rarely even seen, I can't think of a place where I've even seen it used. So the default is drop down. And then there were all these different autocomplete modes. Suggest says, hey, you type a letter in here and it makes a suggestion. Here's the items that I have on my list that match what you have typed so far. Notice all the rest of them are filtered. There's a slight side effect here as well. These are alphabetized. They may not have been in the original list. We'll see that in our math program, that they show up alphabetized even though that's not the way they show in the original list. If I type another letter like an H, then it filters the list even further. A U filters it even further. That's nice. But I still have to use my arrow key to pick the rest of it, and that's kind of an inconvenience. So that's suggest. Here's append. I type a letter, it goes, ooh, I got one that starts with C. How about Charles? But notice it's not showing me the rest of them. It's just telling me this is the first one I have that starts with C. If I press an H, it stays. If I press a U, then it keeps going. It still works pretty well, right? Because the back half, the stuff that I didn't type is highlighted, it's automatically replaced by anything else I type. So that's not bad. My preference, however, is give me both. Now with both selected, when I type a C, it goes, ooh, how about Charles? And if that isn't good enough, here's a few other choices. And so I can type or I can click. This is my favorite kind of combo box. It's a drop-down style because that's what makes autocomplete work better. Both. Most of my combo boxes, if they have any length to them at all, and even if they don't, are drop-down, autocomplete both. Here's what happens when you do drop-down list. I can't type anymore. Well, I can kind of if I click up there and type really fast. like A, okay, but if I type a DI really fast, it does go there. But I've lost my suggest. It's kind of auto-completing, but notice it's not filtered anymore. And if you've got hundreds of items on this list, that lack of filtering is annoying. And so it kind of works here if you can type fast. But I can't type a D and then an E, because now if I wait in between, it's looking for E's. If I type them really fast, DE, then it jumps. But if I type them too slow, then the second one is a new letter instead of an attached letter. It confuses the heck out of my users. So I don't use it. So this is my favorite style. Questions about the ComboBox autocomplete? It's just a sample program to demonstrate it. Up on OneDrive if you want to see it. What we're going to continue with today, let's see, this is the 4 o'clock class, right? Yes, 4 o'clock. Is the loop statistics that we did last time. We are not going to do city zip. If you're curious, you may email me and I'll send you the completed project. What it does, it's kind of a guessing game, so it's kind of your first look at a matching game. Pick a city, now pick the approach. It's for training zip code postal workers. It demonstrates list boxes and combo boxes. Well, so does our loop statistics. I think you're getting enough out of that. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to talk about that. But if you want the completed version, I'll try to remember throwing up on OneDrive. If I forget, somebody remind me later. Did I show you the flowchart for this last time? I forgot all kinds of stuff in this class. The flowchart for this is already available, and I'm following it fairly religiously. But it gives you an idea of how to do flowcharts with for loops. Today we're going to be doing min and max functions. Okay. What this one doesn't do, I really ought to update it to show you how to do for next loops, but this will do. If you give me a for loop with diamonds that kind of has the right stuff, or hexagons that kind of has the right stuff in it, I'll be happy for your assignment tracker. That's where it fits. Pseudocode is also in here. So all of that's there, and I'm following it pretty closely. I'm going to leave that open in case I need it later. And now I'm going to open the loop statistics program and do a quick review of what we did last time. Maybe. Okay, remember this program simply generates random numbers based on the size that the user picks, and then we can generate statistics from it. In the code for button new, we talked briefly about this try parse, which is new. It's a combination parse and try that's buried inside an if statement. If it works, then it automatically takes whatever's in here, turns it into a number, and puts it into the variable called list size. You don't have to use this. It's just a nice shortcut. And an else statement that goes with it. So if it fails, you don't have a catch, you have an else, because it's an if statement. So it's a try parse that returns false if it does. This is a false if it doesn't work. And you get the else statement. That one is flowcharted as an if statement. There's the if. Is it numeric? Nope. Error message. Otherwise, go ahead and transfer it to the list box or to the list size variable and carry on. So that's how I would flowchart that. Is there a question, Chris, or you just chilling? Okay. So then after that, we cleared the list because we discovered that if I say new numbers, it tacks it on to the end, unless I clear the list first. Remember that the list box is comprised of an items collection. All the stuff that we put in list boxes and combo boxes go into items. That list can be cleared. Then I wrote a regular for loop, a classic for loop that starts at 1, goes to the list size, and generates 100 random numbers. Or I'm sorry, as many random numbers as we want, from 0 to 100. And then to make it look right and to sort properly, we had to print them or add them to the list box with a size of 3, so they got some leading spaces. So this command here ensures the numbers sort properly. Otherwise they were sorting as text, and all the 1s were lumped together, then all the 2s, and then all the 3s, including the 1s, the 10s, and the 100s all together, the 2s, the 20s, and the 200s all together. They were sorted as text, and that's not what we wanted. To get them to sort like they normally would with numbers, we cheated and put spaces in front of them, and I'll show you in a second they sort. After the list has been generated, then we enabled the ComboBox for statistics, so the user can pick what kind of statistics they want to generate in whatever order they want to generate them. We're going to finish writing that today. And then the list box of statistics we cleared as well. Right, so back here, we clicked this, let's just run it. Form load automatically sticks a 50 in the list size for me, so I don't have to enter it over and over again, but I can change it. Form load also disables this combo box so that I can't pick a statistic until I have numbers. So as soon as I click new numbers, it quickly generates 50 numbers and then enables my combo box so I can pick from it. And it also cleared this out because we said list statistics.items.clear. So any statistics that might have been here before get cleared out. I think we did count. Generate new numbers, that got cleared out. So demonstration is something you can apply to your math program, maybe your assignment tracker program, so you don't let the user do something before they should try it, because some of the users will do it. Click on give me an answer before there's even an equation. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's not much I ask you to do in that math program, just a little bit to demonstrate that enabling, disabling stuff. When we sort these now, that works. They sort right, they line up centered, which is a little weird, but that's because of the spaces that are in front. They don't line up exactly. This is a proportional font. If I change it to a monospace font, then they would line up on the 1s columns and the 10s columns and the 100s columns. But they are sorted. I think we also did the sum, but before we go on, let me show you something. It let me type Volcker. It didn't do anything, it didn't calculate any statistics, but it let me type Volcker. The downside to using a drop-down combo with autocomplete, and before I forget, there's one other thing I want to mention. Remember, when you do autocomplete, it's a two-step process. You must designate that you want suggest append, and you also have to demonstrate or designate that you want to pick from the list items. This is the one that everybody forgets. If you don't do that, it doesn't work. Doesn't pick, doesn't autocomplete from the list items. So you have to do both components. But because I left this a drop-down, because a minute ago I demonstrated that if I turn it into a drop-down list, it doesn't work very well with autocomplete. Now the user can type whatever they want. And what I forgot to do in this class last time, we're going to do now, is check to see if what the user entered in that combo box is on the list. Because they can type whatever they want. If it's not on the list and they try to leave, calculate a statistic, we're going to yell at them. So you got to pick something that's on the list. This is kind of an introduction to the validation that we're going to be doing next semester. In yesterday's class, Harold was in here and I said, this event that we're using, this validating event, we're going to wear it out next semester. We're just going to write validating events, and not just next semester, pretty much the rest of your programming career. Over and over and over again, validating is a big, huge deal. This is an introduction to it. You want more? Cost you $500 in another 17 weeks. Somebody asked me yesterday, is it worth it? Oh, absolutely. Okay, so what I need to do is write an event that lets me know that what's in there is not acceptable. The event is already here. I'm going to collapse these so I can see what's going on. Here's the CMB statistic validating event. Remember, there's a selected index changed event as well. And because there's no Volcker in here, and there's no default, that's another way I could validate this, by the way, is put a default in here and then display a message box saying, hey, that's not on the list, try again. The problem is, as soon as I start typing, it'll yell at me. Just the letter C won't be good enough. So I don't know if that's good or bad. That's another alternative. The best way to do validating, though, is to use the validating event. This event, it's a weird one. It occurs between change of focus. So imagine I'm in this combo box, and then I press tab to go someplace else. On the way, on the board yesterday, I drew an arc from here to here. About halfway in between is where the validating event occurs, before the focus changes. It's checking the answer. And what's cool about validating, if we want to, is we can cancel the change of focus and say, don't change focus, go back. Make them fix it. And that's what we're going to do. We're also going to display this message. Notice that that message doesn't show up initially because it's hidden. But if there's something wrong, then we'll display this message. So instead of a message box, we're going to display a message in the label and then hide it and show it. That's also similar to what we're going to do next semester. Hide and show errors. Instead of making a message box that pops up and makes them stop and grab the mouse and click on the OK button, we're going to display a message instead. So that's the plan. Question?
Is there anything in the form that you can double click to get that validating, or do you have to create it yourself?
To clear it out?
No, to get that validating.
Oh, no, you have to generate. Okay, her question is, how did I get that event? Right? If you double click, you get selected index changed. So how do I get this one? Select my combo box, go to the trusty dusty lightning bolt and say, now in addition to this one, I want to have a validating event, and if you double click here, it will create it. Good question. Okay, so here we are. How can I check to see if what the user typed is on the list? I'm going to show you 4 different ways. The hard way first, as always. My first thought is, let's just check. Here's what the user typed. Let's go through every item on the list, because that should be pretty easy. And if it's there, cool. If it's not, then we yell at them. We'll just go through every item. How do we go through every item? We did that already last time. We did a for each loop that totaled them all up. This time we're going to go through and say, hey, are you what they typed? 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 So let's do that. Get another experience here with a for loop. The other thing we're going to need, however, is our first flag. If I find it, the item that I'm looking for in the list, I need to put a flag up so later on I can check to see if it was found. So I'm going to define our first flag, a Boolean. I'm going to call it found it. And I'm going to initialize that to false because at this stage of my programming, I have not found it. Is what the user typed, that's the text property, is that on the list? Initially, my tip-up flag is down. No, haven't found it yet. And now I want to write a loop that goes through every item in my combo box. So that's a for each loop, because the list already exists. If the list exists, you can probably go through it with a for each loop. Each item in that list is a string. I'm going to call it item. For each item in my CMB statistic dot items. Remember, that's a collection of items. So again, lousy in the recording, but I'm holding my finger up. Item, this is item. I could put a little stamp on there, so this is item, and it's going to point to every item on the list in turn, one at a time. And in this case, it does start at the top, not that it matters. Starts at the top, works its way down. Every time through the loop, it goes to the next one, the next one, the next one. That happens automatically. When it gets to the end, the loop ends automatically. So item is what I'm calling that thing that I'm pointing at right now, the first one in the list. What do I want to know? Is it the same as what they typed? If what they typed. That's CMD statistic.text. Just like a text box. It is a text box with a list hiding inside it. If what they typed is equal to this item that I'm pointing to right now, because I'm walking down the list, then I found it. Point, the tip up flag goes up. And then I just keep going, round and round and round, until I find it, right? And then after my loop, let's put some end statements here so we can see what's going on. After I've gone through all the items, I want to know, did I find it? And if I didn't, I'm going to show that error marker. And if I did, I'm going to hide it. Two ways to do that. If found it, not even going to bother with the curly brackets, then my LBL error message, wait a minute, let's go with not found it. If I didn't find it, that's what that says, right? Not found it. Then my error message dot visible equals true. Otherwise, and this is why I flipped it around, this is a very common mistake. You stop right there. Boom, my error message shows up. Great. But then I pick one from the list and the error message never goes away. Once you show it, what makes it go away? So I have to put the else clause in here. Very common mistake is to not put in the else. To say the error message dot visible equals false. And there's my first solution to this. I'll try to leave that on the screen and run it at the same time here. I can't even test this until I generate some numbers. Okay? And now I'm going to type Voker in here. Notice nothing happens. The downside, if you want to look at it that way, of validating is nothing happens until you leave. You try to set focus someplace else by clicking on sort, by clicking on clear, by clicking over someplace, or pressing tab to move in the tab order. Validating doesn't happen until then. You might see that as a flaw. I see that as an advantage. Let the user type, oops, erase that, type, erase that, fix it. Okay, now I'm done. Leave. Then yell at them if it's wrong. I think it's an advantage. If you yell at them after every character, they get tired of it real fast. Tab. There's my message. Cool. Pick one from the list. Still have to leave. And what some people like to do is that when you come back, turn the message back off again. But how do you know when they picked something different? I still have to leave to make the message turn off. My users get used to that very quickly. Because they'll call me and say, I fixed it. The error marker's still there. Did you leave the field yet? Tab. Never mind. Couple times and they stop calling. They get used to that. You got to leave because they can't check your new answer until you say you're done. So it seems to work here. What happens if I type my own? Or what if I type it lowercase? Not a problem because autocomplete says, hey, that's on the list. Fix it, no problem. I tabbed, I'm down here in the sort button. That's another nice thing about autocomplete. If I type it myself, the whole thing, it still finds it. If you don't have autocomplete on and you type it yourself, the selected index is -1, saying you didn't pick something from the list because you typed it. That's stupid. Autocomplete fixes that. I like autocomplete. Unfortunately, it makes me have to do my own validation. Let's shorten things a little bit. I'll keep that there in case you like it. Sometimes that makes more sense to you. Here's a shorter version. If it's not found, visible equals true. If this is false and I did find it, visible equals false, and it should correlate. Just a little shorter. Not necessarily very clear unless you look at it carefully. If I didn't find it, not found, then the error marker is visible. Otherwise, it's not visible. Quick test should work. So that's a little better, a little shorter. Shorter is not necessarily better. I don't want to give you that impression. If this makes more sense to you, go with it. If it makes more sense to say, if you found it, hide the error message, else show it. That works. It's just reverse logic of mine here, that's all. Now, I told you I was going to show you a couple other ways to do this. Oh, there's one other problem. Let's put a breakpoint on this. And I'm going to pick count. How long is it going to take it to find it? It's first on the list, right? Let's find out. Tab. Here's my breakpoint. I'm going to press the F10 key to walk through. And it's going to say, okay, I got the list. So the item in the list, what's item? Count. Notice I can touch it and see it. Count. What's in the text? Count. Cool. Do they match? Yes. Found it. So now we're done and we can just get up. Where are you going? What are you doing? What's it doing? It's checking all the rest of them. Stupid program. Now it's doing exactly what we told it to. Go through each item in the list. Technically, this shouldn't be a for loop. It should be a do while loop or a while loop that we're going to learn about next hour. Because keep going until you find it. How long is it going to take until I find it? I really don't know. Most programmers today, object-oriented programmers, are so in love with this for each loop that they make it work. Remember our friend break from case statements? You hit the bottom of the case. If you hit the break, you jump out of the rest. If you use it inside of a loop, it says, I don't care if you think you're done or not, out. I can see that CN likes it. I don't. Paul's cringing because we were trained as structured programmers, meaning one entry, one exit. There's another exit in the middle of my loop. How do you flowchart that? That's a go-to, exactly. But it's a clean go-to because it's going to the end of the loop. All right? But how do you flowchart a break? I don't know. You draw an arrow that goes out of the loop and back around to the bottom. Ugh. And how do you write that? You put it in a rectangle? You put it in a triangle? I don't know. I don't do this too often. And when I do, I don't flowchart it. I'm embarrassed. But it works well. All right? What I have, and I don't like it because this break can be hidden, and a classic trained programmer would say, this is going, why is it going all the way? Why is he using a for loop? It goes all, oh no, there's a break in the middle. Never mind. We're getting used to it. Paul's just been introduced to it, so he's got some getting used to it. I've been watching people write this for years now, and it is so common that I have to say, it works, go for it.
So it just forces it out.
Yes, it says go exit the loop right now. Every language does it a little different. I think JavaScript is called exit loop. Still a go-to, but it's exit loop right now. What I have been doing, if I use them, is say end for each. There might be, or note, there's a break. So you might have exited early. Particularly if there's 30, 40, 100 lines of code and there's a break stuck in the middle someplace. Oh my God, that's hard to find. This is small, so it's not bad. And most of the examples, I'll admit, that I've seen are very small, 5, 10 line loops. The break is pretty obvious if you're paying attention. This makes it a little more obvious. Now if I run it again with my breakpoint, pick count, tab, because the validating, I'm still invalidating. Validating doesn't happen until I leave. Okay, now it's checking and it goes through once. Say, are you the count? Yep, found it. Then it hits the break. Now watch. Much more efficient. There's 9 items on the list. I just wasted 8 billionths of a second at most. Does it really matter here? Probably not. But what if there were 9,000, 10,000 items on the list and I found it in the first one and I go through all 10,000 of them? That's a half a second. Maybe. Might not be such a good idea there. There's a better, I don't know if it's a better solution. There's another solution to this, and that's a do while loop, a pretest or a post-test loop that we're going to talk about. Well, we don't know how many times we have to go till we find it. We don't know. So it's a better solution, but I see this so often now. Today's object-oriented programmers, if for each works, they'll make it work. Yes, sir.
I can live with that because
I'm glad. Let's move on.
now versus a go-to, this is only going to go down to your next sequential instruction versus a go-to saying go anywhere.
It could go somewhere, right? This is like a go to the end of the loop.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a go-to. I don't like it, but yeah, it's not going real far, so it's not so bad. I'm learning to live with it. Okay, that's solution number one. That works. Here's solution number two. And comment that one out. And this is a little different than I did it in the other classes, so if you're watching the recording and this is different than I did it in your class, it's because there's 3-4 different acceptable ways to do it. When we talked about the combo boxes, we talked about a selected index property. And in my notes, and I can go find it, but trust me, in my notes it says, if you type something and it's not on the list, the selected index, the number of the item that you picked, can't be a real number, it's -1. Why don't I just use that? Let's leave this Boolean found it. I'm going to leave the flag. That's what's different from the other versions. If the CMB statistic selected index is not equal to -1, and I found it. If it is equal to -1, it means it's not on the list. So I could, let's reverse the logic temporarily here. False, true, false. If it is equal to -1, then found it equals false. Can't even type that today. That makes a little more sense. Assume it's on the list. And then if you find out that the index is -1, that means it's not on the list. Set found it to false. It's not on the list. That's what -1 means. That's by definition. It's not a number I made up. Can't be 0 because 0 in computer counting is real, right? It's the first one, number 0. So -1 is a special little flag that they coded into our combo box to say they picked something that's not on the list. Quick test. Notice that my error message down there didn't change. Not on the list. And this doesn't have to walk through. Uh-oh. Really? I haven't left yet. Couldn't have done that right away? Maybe. The problem with right away is that you have to, when you pick from a list, it works really good, but if you're typing, it starts yelling right away. Before the user's even done typing count, it goes, hey, that's not on the list. There are other ways. Okay, here's another annoying thing. Watch this. Not on the list, that's nice. Click. Oh. I forgot something. This works pretty good the way it is, right? Because the error message shows up, but I got to leave. I got to do other stuff. In next semester, that's normal. We want them to leave and then come back and fix it later. So that they can type down a form and not have to stop because there's an error. But what I didn't show you, how did I cancel the change of focus? So now I have to go back, oh my goodness. I have to go back to this because I now have to do two things. If it's not found, I have to do two things. So I need curly brackets now. Man, I made this worse. Considering the time on the clock up there, we're not going to get done today. If I didn't find it, display the error message, but go back. I'm going to cancel the change of focus. I'm going to show this to you. I'm tempted to turn it off because I like it the way it is right now. I get a red error marker, boing, boing, boing. And it lets me do other stuff in the meantime. How do we cancel the change of focus? We've messed with our friend the sender up here before, but notice there's a second argument up here that we can talk to, and that's the cancel arguments. And there's a wonderful variable name for the cancel arguments, E. It's another one of those things I used to change, but it's so common. All the languages use it for event arguments. E for event. I don't mess with it anymore. I can do this, E dot cancel, as in cancel focus, equals true. Don't I have to do E cancel down here equals false? No, that's the default. It'll do it anyways. How did I know I forgot that? Let me show you. Voker. I'm going to press tab. Watch what happens. It goes back. I said, no, you're not leaving. Voker go. No, you're not leaving. I'm pressing tab. Showing, no, I'm not leaving. Okay, I give up. No, you're not leaving. I can't even close the for. Because that's a change of focus. From here to there is a change of focus. Well, we did in the other class, and so now I got to take this out. No, I got to pick something real from the list. And notice even that's causing trouble now because I'm changing focus to the arrow. This is its own object. Doesn't look like it. It looks like it's part of the combo box, but it's not. It's its own object. There's a change of focus. I got to come in here and go down arrow. There we go. Now we got one I can get out. Jeez. It's kind of annoying, but very secure because they cannot leave that box until they type something that I want. And the message down underneath says, got to pick something from the list. What we did in the other class, just to make this a little bit friendlier, is we said if the text, no, the combo box text is not equal to the empty string, then do all this stuff. Otherwise, just skip it. So if it's the empty string and they want to leave, we let them leave. That also comes in handy in case they're just kind of navigating through the form trying to test the tab order. I can leave when it's empty. I can't leave when it's Q. Nope, can't do it. I can do an A, then auto suggest helps me out and lets me leave. So empty is an option. That was a whole, and look at the code. You know, even if we take the comments out, look at the amount of code to validate one stupid thing. Pick from the list, please. That's one field. We have to do the same kind of processing for every field on the form before we stick the data in the database. Does it make sense? That's half of next semester, learning how to do validation in a different way. If yours isn't working, I would comment it all out right now and get mine later. And this is now all of a sudden much closer than what I did in the other class. Okay. Let's not waste too much time here. So let's keep plugging along. And I'm going to ask if there's questions, but don't ask any. No, if you got them, let me know. If yours doesn't work, just comment it out. You can either fix it later or you can get a copy of mine. Last time I was supposed to do that, and in the other classes that took the rest of the hour. Well, we didn't do that, so we got ahead of things here a little bit, and we coded a little bit of CMB selected index changed. In CMB selected index, I'm basically figuring out what did they pick. If they picked count, then display in the list statistics list box, that's the one in the lower right, display the word count followed by the count of items in the list. The list knows how many items it has in it. Even as it grows, it keeps track constantly of how many items are in the list. So all we have to ask is, hey, you, items list, what's your count right now? And the count is always a human count, like 5. If there's 5 things in the list, it says 5. The indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's 5 items. So when you ask for a count, it tells you how many there are. That's not asking what's the index of the last item. It's not what that's asking or giving us. It's telling us how many items are actually in the list. You, the smart programmer, know that the index of the last one is count minus 1. So we wrote that quick demo that it still works. Give me the count, 50. And we said, well, couldn't we just grab that number up there and transfer it in? We could. But then you wouldn't learn that the list knows how many items it has in it. And so this is just as simple. Actually, in a way, it's a little easier because I don't have to parse it first. This is still a text box. I got to parse it. But if I'm just displaying it, why do I have to parse it? I don't. I could have just taken that text, stuck it on there, done. That would work. Not so simple when we're summing, though. Now we want to add things up. The other thing I didn't talk about in the review was at form load, we said, call this expert, right? Call this method to fill my combo box of statistics. And we talked about experts, right? Call them. This one goes on hold until that one's done, then it comes back. In our statistics here, we did the same thing. We created a brand new calc sum method. You can create these whenever you want. Whenever you think it's right for you as a programmer to create a method. Usually it's for one of 2 reasons. I want reusable code. Get random. I want to use it over and over and over again in 75 different programs. Write it once, put it in a method, suck it in when you need it. The other reason to write a method is to break a long, complicated process down into parts. Calculating the sum isn't too complicated, but instead of doing all the work here inside my case, I just said, hey, you do it. And I'll wait for you to give me the answer. We calculated the sum by using a for each loop. We went through every item in the list of numbers one at a time. For every number in the list, we had to parse it because we put those darn spaces on there. But I need the spaces to sort, so I have to parse it here. The trim is optional. It took spaces off. I think we discovered that it worked fine without the trim. So this goes through every number in the list and adds it to the sum. Where did the sum start? It was initialized to 0. Uh-oh. Where was sum initialized to 0? Wasn't. Wow. Where's a good place to do that? Right here. Or maybe better yet, let the expert do it. Why should I do it out here? I'm not about calculating sums. You are. So before you start going through the list, calculate. I'm surprised we didn't get an error on that. Let's make sure the sum works. I expect a sum around 2,500. So that seems to work. And notice now if I want the count, I can say give me the count. And then this says give me the sum and I can get another sum. If you really want to go crazy, you write code to say you already got it. Why are you asking me again? Could. Before we take a break, let's do one more. By the way, this calculates, but it does not display. When we did IOPS, we separated inputs from processing from output. When you write methods, they should have one and only one purpose. Calculate the sum, not calculate and display the sum. If you put the word and in your method name, it's not a good idea. It'll work. I could have displayed up there just fine. But particularly for reusability, we might want to use this calculating the sum of a collection in the future. Much better to display separately. Let's do the average real quick, and then we'll take a break. How do I calculate the average? Take the sum divided by the count. Whoa. Can I reuse my calc sum? Sure. Do I have a function or method already for calc average? Yep, it's already one up there. So I already have an expert. You, do your job. Okay, first thing I need is the sum equals calc sum. Didn't I do that already? Oh, you don't know that the user clicked sum first on the list and then average? You don't know that. So I'm going to calculate the sum. And I already know the count, right? Oops, sorry. I don't even have to say sum equals. All I have to do is say calc sum. Done. Now my class level variable is up higher, has the sum in it. Then I can say, hey, you, Mr. Average, you are equal to the sum divided by the count. Do I have the count? Yeah, I always have the count. It's in list number items dot count. So already you're seeing reusability. Instead of copying that for loop that's in here into here to calculate the total all over again, just do that. What should the average be if I'm generating random numbers between 0 and 100? Somewhere around 50. With 50 numbers, it should be close. Let's see. Oops. Never mind. Because down here I said, I got to call my expert, calc the average. And notice what's happening here. I'm the president, and I'm calling Pam to say, calculate the average. She said, I need the sum. She calls Karen and said, I need the sum. Karen says, I'm done. Here you go. Pam says, thank you very much. She does her magic, and then she comes back to me. That chain, following it backwards, happens automatically. So I calc the average, but then I need to display it, so I'm going to cheat to copy this. And in this case, I'm going to format it because it's an average. I don't want lots of decimal places. Let's go with 2. And I need one more parenthesis for my add. So now it should display it. Generate some numbers. Should be around 50. There's my average with some reusability in it. Now, before I finish this up, or before I give you a break, there's one other thing. Last year, somebody said, why are you calculating the sum? If, let's say I do this when I'm running the program. There's the sum. Now give me the average. What happened when I calculated the average? It recalculated the sum, right? Called the expert. Let's do that again. I can't clear it, so I have to kill it. We'll write clear before we're done. I'm calling Karen directly. Say, Karen, give me the sum. She said, here you go, 2614. Genius. Now I call Pam and say, give me the average. And what does Pam do? She calls Karen and says, give me the sum. And she says, geez, I just did this, 2614. Pam says, thank you very much. And she sends me the average. Do I really need to calculate that sum again? Is there a way I can make my program smart enough to sense that the sum has already been calculated for these numbers? If it's what? Greater than 0. Yes, but we have to be careful. How does it get set in the first place? Remember, that was my question earlier. Maybe I need to initialize this to 0. Then every time I click button new, I should start it off at 0. So every time I generate new numbers, I reset the sum. And then I don't need to do it in here, in Calc sum, wherever that was. This one I don't need anymore because every time I click button new, it resets the sum. And finally here, if the sum is 0, then calculate it, otherwise skip it, because it's already been done. And so I call Pam and she says sum. She looks at that class level variable. It's got 2614 in it. She says, oh, that's my sum. I'm going to use that. Unless it's 0, then she calls Karen and said, I need the sum, and then calculates it. I'm mixing two things here. I'm making my program work, and then I'm getting bright ideas and I'm adding them. I don't recommend you do that yet, because you have due dates and you don't know how long it's going to take. My advice for you is write those good ideas down on a piece of paper on the side. My program works. Here's a good idea though. And then get the rest of it to work. And when the whole program works, not just this piece, I'm just working on the average. When the whole program works, then put the good ideas in, as in don't recalculate the sum if it's already been done. Because I ended up changing 1, 2, 3 different methods to make this function properly. And I can see the side effects because I'm used to this. And you're just getting started seeing those side effects. My advice, make the program work to meet my specifications. And then if you got good ideas on your list, fine. Make a copy of your program. Keep this so you can submit it later if all else fails. And then try to enhance it and get a couple of bonus points if you got time. I'm kind of doing both. All right, let's take that break. When we come back, we've still got to do the min and the max, and those are little interesting logic puzzles.